Hello, welcome everybody to the Pixie Dust Podcast. Annie Frey here, very excited to be with you as we talk about the most common apprehensions that people might have when planning a Disney World trip. What are the concerns that people tend to have, and what concerns should you be, maybe can we help you answer as you plan your next Disney trip? Erica Murphy, my co-host here. Hi, Erica.
Hi, Annie.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. We are both have makeup on, and we are ready to talk to you on a podcast. It's a weird world that we're living in right now. We're used to not having to go out at this point in time. We are still before everything opens up. We're going to talk at the end of this podcast about some news that has just recently come out in the last 24 hours about Universal Studios opening up after the coronavirus pandemic. That's going to be at the end of the show, because we want to get to some of these concerns that people might have about planning their next Walt Disney World vacation. Erica is with Magic Expeditions, and she's a travel agent for lots of different places, but specializing at Disney World. So, Erica, I'm sure the apprehensions now here as we record this at the end of May of 2020 are a little bit different than the usual version, but a lot of them are probably also the same.
Yeah, and that's just the thing that I think that a lot of the concerns that come up over the course of the year, this is just kind of heightened right now. One of the first things I want to talk about was the cancellation policy. And that's something that life happens all the time, not just when there's a pandemic going on. That even before this happened, I had somebody that their daughter came down with the flu like 4 days before they were ready to go. And it's like, you're spending all this money. You don't want to, well, first of all, you don't want to fly when you're sick. And so having that cancellation policy, even after all of this, I think is something that's very, very well received.
Yeah, for sure. So the cancellation policy. First, tell me what the traditional cancellation policy has been up until this time where Disney has been experiencing a shutdown. What is the traditional cancellation policy? If you've got your trip booked, or if you were somebody who was thinking about booking a trip, what is the traditional way about going and changing your mind for whatever particular reason down the road?
Sure. So to get a reservation booked, you need a $200 deposit. Once that deposit is placed, you can start planning and doing all of your fast passes and dining reservations. You have 30 days before departure to pay off your final balance. Once that's done, then that's when it's not refundable. Any day outside of that 30-day window is fully refundable.
Fully refundable.
Fully refundable. The $200 deposit, any money that you put down. One thing that I do like to say, because I know in some of our previous episodes we talked about how gift cards can kind of be a little hack to save. If you pay for a trip with a gift card, they will return that money to those gift cards. So make sure that you hold on to that. And in most cases, you're going to want to plan another trip and go back. So you can just use those funds towards your next trip. Within that 30-day window, like I mentioned, the family before that had to cancel, they just transferred it to a new reservation, and they're very accommodating. So what we would do is just pay the difference if, a standard room was no longer available and you had to go to a preferred room or go for that. That would just transfer those funds to your new reservation.
Okay, so you can change your reservation, but Disney is going to if you're inside of that 30-day window, traditionally Disney's got your money.
Yes. So
to reiterate, we're talking about concerns people might have booking their next trip at Disney. You only need to have $200 down to have that reservation held up until 30 days of your check-in date. So it's a $200 commitment, which in this scheme of Disney World spending is not that big. It's not a huge commitment to that. And up until that 30 days, you can move your trip around, you can make changes, and then up until when you get to that 30-day mark, you can add a lot. I like what you said, though, about the gift cards, because I am somebody who does purchase my Disney. I pay most of what I pay Disney with gift cards because I find ways to save money on gift cards. And if you're spending a few $1,000s on a trip and you're saving 5% on the gift cards you buy, that adds up very quickly. But just know that the money that you're saving, like for me, I consider that, okay, if I'm gonna get $3,000 in Disney gift cards because I'm going to take a vacation, those $3,000, when I've committed that to that gift card, I know that that's going to go to a Disney World vacation sometime. And God forbid there's a shutdown, which would before this been unimaginable.
Right.
Or some sort of personal circumstance. If that money has to go back on gift cards, that's fine, because I'm going to use it at I'm going to modify. I'm not going to cancel. So that was a cancellation policy, as it were. They've really, really changed their approach to cancellations. It's been very guest centric, I would say. You've probably dealt with quite a bit of them. What's your experience now with what Disney has decided to do in the midst of this particular situation?
Yeah, so as the situation is fluid and as it's constantly changing, we don't have an open date for Disney as of right now. So if you have a trip that's planned for June 27th, right now it's still not canceled. So I'm past my 30-day window. If I were to pay my full balance, then that window is a little tricky. So what they've done is they've allowed the window to be 7 days before arrival, and that's typically also when they've been doing cancellations if they were going to extend the cancellation. So you would have a pretty good idea if the park was going to be closed or not. So they've been really accommodating, and as far as moving new reservations, if you think about it, the time that all of this hit was over spring break, which is peak season. So a lot of the people that I've been able to move to the fall, even without a promo, it's now off peak season. So they've saved a little bit of money on the room. So just getting those things, even if you want to be, if you don't feel comfortable traveling at the end of June or early July, if they were to open back up, you could still make any changes with no fees as of right now.
So it's pretty flexible. If you are somebody who is considering a trip, I am itching to get out and go somewhere else. I need this. I have a trip booked for the end of July. I am feeling very potentially irresponsibly confident about my trip, but that's just what I need to do right now. That's what I need to do to get out of May into June for me. But we don't know, and we're probably very close to knowing what that open date, that target date is going to be for Disney. But I think that this is going to be one of probably a dozen times where I tell you to consider working with a travel agent when you book. And Erica is my travel agent with Magic Expeditions, and you can contact her easily at the email here, erica@magicexpeditions.com, and you can connect with her on her Facebook page, Erica Murphy, Magic Expeditions, and you can also please like the Pixie Dust podcast Facebook page. We've just started this Facebook page. I think we're about 25 episodes into this podcast now. And so please subscribe if you haven't. Share it with a friend, a Disney loving friend, because this is just kind of the way that we get through and talk about some happy things. It's been more of a challenge here lately, but it's important stuff. And I think that those apprehensions are generally there when you go to book a trip if you're not familiar with it. And I would also add, if you are watching this live on our Facebook page while we broadcast this and you have questions that you want us to answer or suggestions, pieces of advice, please comment along on the Facebook Live as you go. Another apprehension that a lot of people have, I think the biggest one, especially when you're like going into the unknown, so to speak, is cost. Cost is a big, spooky one. Erica, when people say, gosh, I can't afford a Disney World vacation, how frequently do you talk to them and they realize, well, maybe I can afford a Disney World vacation?
Yeah, I'd say almost 10 out of 10 times that a lot of people go into it thinking it's a certain dollar amount. And, you certainly can. They have 3 different levels of resorts. So there's value, moderate, and deluxe. So it certainly can get up there very pricey if you spend at a deluxe. But there's also the value resorts that are very, very nice. They don't skimp in any type of service or accommodations. And that tends to be a lot more affordable than people realize. I think about Ryan on your show. He was kind of questioning it, and I think he was shocked. He was like, "Oh, wow, yeah, no, we can't go this year." So I think a lot of times people have a certain dollar amount in their head, and a lot of times we can typically beat that.
So I was looking the other day around value resorts, and I feel like correct me if I'm wrong, I'm ballparking, a value resort night was in the low 100s.
Yeah, around 140. I think
It
is,
depends on the
yeah,
time,
the
I'm
timing.
sure. But it's doable. I mean, and you can stay in a nice regular old hotel in South Bend, Indiana for a similar amount, and this is
Yeah.
at Disney World. I'm going to add on because staying on property certainly increases the expenditure to an extent, but the access that you get when you stay on property, Erica, what's your advice there if people are kind of teetering between the two?
Yeah. So, in my opinion, time is priceless. And when I am going to Disney, we've talked about how we kind of do Disney a little bit differently, but I don't go from open to close. We're not a rope drop to firework family. So I like being able to go back to the room, and I like being able to relax and maybe eat lunch at a different property and kind of do more of a relaxing type of trip. Um, and with that being said, when you go and stay on property, all of the transportation is included. So it's a 15-minute gondola ride from, if you stay at a gondola property, from Hollywood Studios or Epcot back to your room. So if you're staying off property, you have to get in your shuttle and go however long, 45 minutes, half an hour, however long the property is away from the parks. And to me, that little bit of extra money is worth that time that you get to spend in the park or relaxing in your room or by a pool. I would much rather be by a pool than on a bus.
Yeah, I'll say as a mom of 3 kids, you haven't gone to Disney World yet as a mama. So
Haven't.
and but you've gone like a trillion times. I've been 4 times. The first time I went was with my parents when I was 6 or 7, and I've been back twice with my family, my 3 kids, my husband, and let's see, the first time it was just us that went. We met my brother and sister-in-law there. The next time we went, we met my brother and sister-in-law there, but we had my in-laws come along with me. And then in this July, we're supposed to go with my parents. So crossing my fingers for that. Transportation, like you do have to map out where you're going to go and how you're going to get there. Maybe one day I'll do an entire show on my spreadsheets, because there's a transportation spreadsheet that my husband is in charge of, which is we need to be at this reservation at this point. What would be the best course of action? But we do that type of stuff because we enjoy the planning. If that's not your thing, you don't have to do that. But not having to worry about where's my car and parking and trying to make sure you get your car from one place to the other. We fly, so I wouldn't want to rent a vehicle myself once we get down there. Like from the moment I check my bags in St. Louis, where I'm coming from, and I'm going to MCO to land in Orlando. From the time I hand over my bags, and I've got like a stroller and a carry-on, and that's all I have with me, and then my kids, which is the most important cargo that I have. I don't have to really think about much. I can kind of just move from one place to the other. And to me, as a mom, a working mom, my husband's a teacher, so he's working, and my kids are in activities, like to be able to get there and then just exhale and just kind of go with the flow. Oh my gosh. The transportation and staying on property to me is worth every bit of it. And I would also suggest, if you are adding in the cost to park places and all of the other little expenses that add up over the course of time, it might not be cheaper to stay off property. Yeah. It might not be worth it.
Well, and speaking of spreadsheets, I've, of course, over the course of the years, even before I was an agent, we've done all these spreadsheets of cost savings, of what different scenarios would be. And it's comparable staying on property, off property. Then, and for that, if it's just a little bit more or even the same, I 100% will stay on property, and you get a cool magic band.
Yeah, you do. And then you come home and you're like, I'm just going to try to scan in places and see if I can get in anywhere.
Well, and not only that it's just the reservations and kind of the perks that you get for staying on property. You get advanced reservations for fast passes and dining than people that are staying off property. So if you want to eat and take your daughter to Cinderella's royal table, if you're staying on property, you have a much better chance of getting that sought after reservation than you do staying off property.
And that's all stuff. If you're hearing this and you're going, like, I don't know what you're talking about. I thought we were going on vacation. Yeah. If you're thinking that, that's why you use Erica, because you can really, she'll ask you questions, you answer the question, she makes it happen. That is a very, very fantastic thing. We have a question here from John, and he says, military discounts?
Yes. So I actually have a Pixie Dust podcast listener who booked with me, who is a military family, and they were able to get the military tickets on base, and there was
Ooh.
a significant discount on base. They get the memory maker and the tickets. And I believe she said they could do the dining too. I apologize. I'll have to double check that.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just did a room only reservation with me.
So if they can do that, you can work with them and guide them to where they're going to save the most money, what's best for them, and then they can still organize all the rest of the stuff with you.
Absolutely. And I will say, we were talking about the cancellation policy and cost and all that. You can get insurance with a third-party insurance, and that would kind of alleviate all that. It adds a little bit more of a cost, obviously, because it's insurance. But I believe them. So when you buy with the military, you buy on base. So all of the cancellations and returns and all of that, everything is done through your base.
Okay. Fantastic. We have a list here and I'm checking these off as we go, but I'm going to skip ahead one if you do not mind. So we've talked about concerns. These are things that you'll be concerned about before you book your next Disney World trip. We've talked about the cancellation policy. We just talked about cost. That'll probably come back up throughout the course of this conversation. But one of them here, I'm going to read Christopher's comment that we have as we're recording this on our Facebook page. So like us on our Facebook page, and when we record these lives, you can ask questions along with us. Hey, Annie and Erica, I still owe my wife a honeymoon. We had a Disney cruise booked years ago, but had to cancel because she got pregnant and there was a Zika outbreak in the Caribbean. Stupid viral outbreaks. Yes. This kind of goes to the one point that we have listed here about, is Disney just for kids? So you've got a couple here that is thinking about celebrating a honeymoon. Maybe they want to go by themselves. Sounds like they have kids now, so maybe they want to take the family. But when it comes to Disney World being, in my mind, what it was stereotypical to me just before I went in July of 2018. So in June of 2018, to me, I was like, oh gosh, I'll do this for my kids. It'll be fun. I'll be happy for my kids because my kids will be happy. And then like 2 years later, I am a Disney nerd. I'm a Disney person through and through, and I'm shouting it from the rooftops. So what do you say if people are considering Disney a place just for kids?
Yeah. So, you mentioned I've never been to Disney as a mom. My little Braden is going to be.
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
Next week. I know. It's crazy. He's going to be 1 year old next week, which I'm, little torn up about. But, my husband claims that he was never a Disney person. So when we first got together, of course, he was like, yeah, I'll go because of you, because I've always loved it. I was able to go as a kid. And my husband is a Murphy. So he's, very Irish, very stereotypical, strong, doesn't talk about, Disney is not for adults, it's for kids. He went the first time. I was able to talk him into going because he had a conference down there. And then he was the one that booked our next trip back. So
got him
several times.
Got him.
Not because, of course there's the shows and there's, they have a lot of stuff that is directed towards kids. We don't go on Dumbo, just the two of us. I mean, we probably could, but there's I
think we went on Dumbo, just the two of us.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Was I not supposed to do that?
No, but that's the good thing about Disney is that it's something for literally everybody.
Yeah.
So they have some of the best James Beard Award-winning chefs that are on property. So I'm a big foodie. I love trying the different cuisines. At Epcot, there's the different pavilions. So, we could have a cocktail and have beignets in Paris and then stumble over and have dinner in Italy. And it's very romantic. There's different boat rides you can take back and forth. There's so many different things at Disney to do. Standing in front of the Magic Kingdom and Cinderella's Castle and watching the fireworks. I mean, I can't think of anything that's more romantic.
It's different when your kids are not there.
Yeah.
It's different. It is a romantic experience. My husband and I went, just the two of us. We were considering buying into the Disney Vacation Club. So we wanted to go for a long weekend, and we arrived, I think, January 31st, and we were there for 3 nights. Friday, I don't know what it was, 3 nights, 4 nights, whatever. And we, when I say we were on Dumbo, like we were giggling at how we were like, we can get on this, because we went and did an after hours event together, just the two of us, obviously. And so we were in Magic Kingdom, just us two, and the park was like empty. It was so crazy. And it was also 50 degrees. And I'm like, we're walking through this park at night. There's nobody here and we are cold. When we are here in July and we are thinking that we would be shoulder to shoulder with people dripping in sweat, we'll be like, we won't even be able to remember what this is like. But we took this long weekend and we went on mine train like 6 times in a row, and we were giggling. And I mean, that was a very cool experience for my husband and I, because when you do go with kids, so I'm not just talking to people who don't have kids at all and think it's not for them because they don't have like that kind of a family. If you want to go with a friend, if you want to go with your significant other, that's your little family. You go do it, and you will feel like a kid again. And you do feel a little bit unburdened by, my constant 1, 2, 3 inventory of my children, and making sure that the 1, 2, 3 I come home with are the same 1, 2, 3 that I went to the park with. But we did a fireworks party for the happily ever after. It was all you can drink. It was the first night of the all you can drink event, and so my husband enjoyed some beers, and I thought that they were going to have sangria, and they didn't. I don't know if they might have changed that. So I think I had a champagne, but we did some drink things that we would not have. It's just, for me, it's not worth it when you have kids and it's the hot summer. Like, it's just a choice that we made. We rode the rides that we wanted to. And then we kind of went and did other things. And so it's casual, which when you have kids, everything goes by the kids. And that's fine. You learn that very quickly. It's the way life is. But, I've said to my husband, and he's agreed and said back to me, that the non-kid Disney trip is going to be a thing. And it did not need to be more than 3 nights, because we could do so much more. We were like unlimited power at our fingertips because we didn't have 3 kids and bags and strollers and stuff with us. So if you have any questions about that, reach out. You can reach out to the Pixie Dust Podcast Facebook page and ask us questions. You can reach out directly to Erica and, ask her questions about that as well, because she's the expert. Here, I want to get to this one, the one that I skipped over here.
Yeah.
Because I kind of alluded to this when I was talking about maybe the 8th tab on my spreadsheet, is that this is overwhelming. I have, oh man, I love spreadsheets. I'm that person, and I have this color-coded spreadsheet. It is a beautiful piece of work, and I've planned 3 or 4 trips on it now. Mm-hmm. But I'm doing that because I enjoy that process.
Sure.
And if someone's talking to me about Disney and they're like, Annie, you really like Disney. Isn't it like overwhelming? Like, you have to know where and if I show them that spreadsheet, they will never go to Disney World. Yeah. They'll be like, at 5:45 on a Tuesday, you're going to go be here. And it's like, no, it's not really that rigid. That's just how I am about it. You don't have to be like that. There's some things you need to plan ahead. But the overwhelming nature of it quickly becomes fun. Like, once you've made the decision, like, we're going to Disney World, that becomes kind of a fun part about it. And I think the overwhelming thing of anything is what you don't know. And that's, again, where you come in, Erica, as a travel agent. The reason why it overwhelms people is because they don't know what questions to ask.
Sure.
You ask them those questions, and you set them up for that, and handhold them as much as they need their handheld to make sure that they have a fantastic vacation, and kind of take the edge off a little bit of that stress that might come along with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, my husband, when he saw that we have 3 fast passes a day and we have a dinner reservation, he's like, I don't know if I'm going to want to eat Moroccan food on Tuesday 6 months from now. And it's like, just I'll tell you where to show up. Like, just come with me. Like, you don't even think about it. And he ended up having a great time. And that's when I book with my clients, I know people don't do Disney the same way. You and I don't do Disney the same way. None of my clients typically do Disney the same way. So having those conversations and giving them the options, and they know what's best for their family. And then we, as travel agents, if you don't work with me, I recommend working with a travel agent that you know, because we do all the planning for you, the dining, the fast passes, the reservations, and it's no cost to you. So we're paid directly by Disney, and it's no different than if you were to book directly on their website. So why not have that help of somebody that looks at the boards? We're constantly looking at reservations. We know the updates. We know the new the restaurants that are coming out. If the space restaurant ever opens up, or different fast passes and how to navigate them. And especially with things like this pandemic that has come out. We've talked about this before. I never thought that they would close. Which why I don't speculate, because now I don't know until they say it. I'm like, okay. But people were on hold for 6-7 hours to try and make changes and make different reservations. And even if you want to plan everything yourself and you love those crazy plans, just having that extra level of somebody in your corner to make those reservations for you when you're in the park, if there was an issue, like maybe your magic band's not working or something is not, instead of you being on the phone with guest services, your travel agent can do that for you. And it's just kind of nice to just show up and just enjoy and relax and kind of let us do the heavy lifting for you.
Yeah. Do you feel like when you talk to somebody, by the time they get to you as a travel agent, how committed, like what percentage committed are they to pretty much booking a trip? Are they pretty committed by the time they get to you?
Yeah, I think so. And I kind of hope that changes through the Pixie Dust podcast, because I would love to just have conversations, even if you're just kind of on the fence about it. Just because you contact me doesn't mean that you have to book. These quotes don't necessarily, nothing is binding. Even if you book and put that $200 deposit down and then, you lose your job or, something is to happen, life happens, you can still cancel and there's no penalty for that. So I would love to have more people just, want to talk about Disney, because I could do that all day. But most of the people that come to me, they're pretty, this is what we want to do. We just don't know how to do it. But I would love to have more people just, want to talk about it.
Yeah. And I think that one of the benefits of reaching out to you, Erica, is that you can answer questions. There's no cost obligation. And you said this before, and I don't want to glance over it because it's such an important part of working with a travel agent. Any travel agent that you work with you're not going to pay more for your Disney trip working with a travel agent that's working with Disney than you would if you just booked it yourself. So whatever you get, any type of help you get from a travel agent is free to you. And in my experience of working with Erica, this again kind of goes back to that cost apprehension that people have, is that when you are so in touch with the daily changes that happen in promos for planning trips and the options that are available to different people, or maybe price changes in different resorts that might exist, that Erica can, on your behalf, once you have told her, like, this is what we want, this is the dream vacation, she can, if free dining becomes available, she can snag that for you, and you'll get an email in the morning that says, saved you $200, saved you $1,000, saved you some inordinate amount of money. And that's something that you might have had to go, live your life that you need to take a vacation from, and you will not know that existed, and they come out in a limited quantity, and you could miss the boat. You don't do that when you work with Erica, which is why I would highly recommend that people connect with her, even if it's just asking questions. So you can send her an email at erica@magicexpeditions.com, or connect with us, ask us questions at the Pixie Dust podcast as well. The next one here, unless you had anything else you want to talk about, the overwhelming thing.
No.
I'll say too, I'll add in here, I've been discussing the potential of going on with a family member of mine who wants to take her kids. It just kind of like brace yourself when you start thinking, when you're saying, oh, you got to make those 6-month dinner reservations or those 60-day ride reservations. It was just the front of it was kind of like a shell that I had to crack through. And then when I got her to listen to me to explain how it works, she was like, oh, okay, that's not a big deal. Like, I'm not locked into eating this meal. I could change it up until 24 hours at no cost, and you could just not go, and a lot of times call Disney if there's a circumstance that comes up, and change your plans on the fly if you don't abuse that, and it won't penalize you. But when I got her attention enough to like understand the process, she was much more open to the idea of it. So if it's something that has you raise your eyebrow, like it looks like it could be fun or you think it'd be great for the kids, but that you get anxiety just thinking about it, that's where you need to have a conversation with Erica, completely no obligation conversation, and throw those apprehensions out, and people will, with us here at the Pixie Dust Podcast, we'll be able to put those concerns at ease, or maybe affirm for you that some of the things you're concerned about are actually going to take place. Like, here's one: is Disney World going to be too hot? Yeah. Well, it's hard to answer that question for any one individual. Yeah. I'll say here, Eric and I live in St. Louis, Missouri, which is sometimes feels like the armpit of the country when it comes to heat and humidity. And I'll say, Erica, when I'm looking at, Facebook groups that I'm involved in or message boards that I read from time to time, people are like, oh, because I always go at the end of July and August. And they're like, July's the worst time. It's all so hot and it's humid and it's just miserable. And why would anybody want to? And then I look and they're from New England. And I'm like, well, I get that. Like, I understand why you would not want to, have your vacation be that existence. But I've gone for more than a week twice now to Disney, where the first week I went, every single day at home was more hot than it was in Florida. So the idea up front that Disney World's just going to be miserably hot in the summer, it's true, but depending on where you were coming from, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be any worse than being at home. And if that's when you can travel.
Well, and the one thing that I wanted to note with that too is I think that Disney has done a really good job. They are definitely a data-driven company. So they've done research on literally everything. So it's not just like blacktop to where you're just scorching in the sun all day. The queues are set up to where they're shaded. Some of them have misters and there's fans. There's indoor activities. So there's, the theaters, like Mickey Philharmonic and different virtual attractions that are indoors so that you can kind of take a little breather from that heat. So it doesn't feel like you're spending 12 hours in the hot Florida sun. I think that Disney has done a really good job of creating the parks with shading, and there's the way that the hills are, that it creates a breeze and some valleys. And I think that they've done a really good job with the elements, and that's something that we can help navigate your trip too. Is, I know you've mentioned doing character dinings is something that kind of just lets you take a breath and kind of just gives you a break from that. So kind of making those plans. Yes, you're making them 6 months in advance, but this is why, so that you can take those breaks while you're in there and, watch a parade, and you're spending 20 minutes watching the Festival of Fantasy parade. And then, it's a little warm. So then maybe we'll go do lunch, or we'll go get ice cream on Main Street and, do a fast pass at Space Mountain so that it's more indoors and the queue is indoors and air conditioned. So we have different little tricks that, yes, it's hot, but it when you're there, it doesn't feel terrible.
Yeah. And I'm going to add too, just to reiterate something I said a little bit there. My husband's a teacher. I have 3 kids and they're in school. I wouldn't be opposed myself to taking my kids out of school as long as they are, succeeding at school, which they currently don't have any trouble in school. It would be different if there was some struggles there, and I thought it would be hurtful to them from an education standpoint. But my husband doesn't get to take a week off in the middle of the school year to go. So a lot of those other kinds of times where it might be more advantageous from a weather standpoint, it's just really not in the cards for us, because all of the super peak times that are not summer, that's when kids are out of school. That's when teachers are out of school. So for my family, it just doesn't work. So we're going to have to do, what we can do to be able to enjoy the magic. And we do. And we just, we go swimming if we need to cool off, or we cool off at the hotel, or we break our day up with an air conditioned meal. Yeah. And there's also so many different attractions at a lot of these places that are indoors. There are shows and everything that really ends up breaking up the monotony a bit of the heat as it hits you. And I'll also say, once I'm out there, like once I get the tank top going and the shorts with the, tennis shoes and a hat to keep some of the sun off my face, then I'm kind of like, it's just gonna be hot. And then you get into the hotel at night and you're like, geez, it's cold in here. You got to shower all the funk off from the entire day. Nobody lays in the bed until you fully showered. But that's definitely one of those things that you just kind of get used to. Unless you're never going to get used to it, then don't go in the summer. It might be too hot for you there, but Erica can set you up with a time that might be more appropriate for you. Yeah. So this kind of goes hand in hand here. The next one. Did you have something else you wanted to say about the heat?
Well, I was just going to say, I think another thing is people always say that there's so much walking too. And that's the same thing. You do a lot of walking when you're in Disney. It's a lot of steps. I think, 30,000, 40,000 steps is something that's very doable in a day at Disney. But again, they had the park set up in a way to where you're not just walking miles and miles. There's breaks and there's things to see that when you get back to your room, maybe your feet are a little sore, but you're like, man, it didn't feel like I walked 30,000 steps a day or 40,000 steps, whatever that your little tracker says. But I think that kind of they've done a really good job of distracting you from those kinds of things.
Mark is commenting right now. If you are watching with us on our Facebook as we record this podcast live, you can add comments along. We enjoy bringing you into the discussion. Mark says, his family, have gone down the past 8 years in the fall, but with my elderly father and brother who has a heart condition and the coronavirus, we canceled for this year. But next year, if the virus becomes a non-factor, it's on. So that's a smart decision for you, Mark. And I commend you for, pulling back right now while you think it's not what's best for you. And, it'll be even that much more magical when you do have the ability to return. But it just goes to show you, 8 years in a row. And it just kind of becomes a thing where you just are like, when do I go again? When I'm coming home on the Tragical Express, I remember the first time we were coming home from our first trip, and this is when we entered as non-Disney people, and I was just having a soul-searching, conflicted moment on the way back to the airport. And I looked at my husband, and I said, we can talk about coming back, can't we? And he's like, yeah, we can talk about coming back. Heath says, my first time to Disney, Thanksgiving 2003. I hated it. We went back about a year later. Loved it from that point forward. We've now been 27 times, LOL. So yeah, I mean, that is kind of just... Yeah. There's different things that can enter your experience and make it more magical on one time or the other, but it seems as though there's a pretty strong consistency that there is something there to like for everybody. All right.
Well, and with he mentioned canceling for September. Historically, the packages for the previous year or for the following year come out around June. So we're hoping to have those 2021 packages.
We also need a park that is open.
We do need a park that is open. And I think that those are all going to come hand in hand. So I think the next couple weeks, we're going to see a lot of information come out.
That is an interesting thought that maybe it could all be at once. Like if it were, we don't know, I don't know, but it would make sense to me that Disney World is now open and you can book your trip through whatever the time frame is.
Yeah. And you can book a room only reservation right now through 2021, which I know we've mentioned before is the 50th anniversary. So I don't know, again, don't want to speculate, but we don't know what.
I love speculating.
Like. I know you do. But I
you have different responsibilities.
I do. But I don't know what that's going to look like with capacity, how long that those capacity rules are going to stay in place. And with 2021 being the 50th anniversary, we already anticipated it being heightened crowds just based on, I want to be there for the 50th anniversary. That's going to be huge. And so if you want to secure your room right now, you can certainly do that, making sure that you get your spot while the reservations are available. And then we can add the package on once they're released as well.
Well, this in my day job on my radio show is what we would call a fantastic segue, because the next apprehension here is Disney World too crowded? Which I'm sure, my when I was talking with my relative who wanted to go, she's like, I said, why don't you go in the summer? I said, you could come when we come. I don't want to go. This is too crowded. It repulsed her to think about being shoulder to shoulder with people. So it's hard to answer this question right now because we don't know what crowded is going to look like. They might reach max capacity and it might be the least populated the park has ever been in my particular experience or yours. But talk to me a little bit, historically speaking, about time of year and the extent with which crowds could previously have existed at Disney World.
Yeah. So in the past, normally say if you don't like crowds, don't necessarily go the week of Christmas or Thanksgiving, because those are going to be the hands down most crowded times. The park, they reach capacity. I want to say it was at like 11 or 12 in the afternoon at Magic Kingdom this past year, to where they weren't even letting anybody else in the park because there were so many people in the park. New Year's Eve, I know we were watching the live feed together on New Year's Eve, like the party animals that we are.
We are so cool. There's a lot of hipness in this mama. Oh my gosh.
I didn't even stay up till midnight. But I got to see the Disney midnight, which that counts. But with that being said,
or Central Time, just so people at home understand what she's saying there. She stretched it.
I did. It was tough. I mean, Dan was asleep, Braden was asleep. I'm like watching fireworks on my iPad, and I'm like, I gotta go. But there was wall to wall people. And for me, even as the Disney lover that I am, I would much rather just watch it on my iPad than to be in that crowd. And like you said, we don't know what this holiday season is going to look like based on if social distancing and all that is still going to be in place. So I'm not even going to try to speculate. But historically, that's the busiest time. And then spring break. And summer really isn't peak season anymore. It's not as crowded as people think that it is. It's going to be your fall, spring break. So if you're wanting to avoid the crowds, I always recommend going like early January, early February. There's a couple dates like President's Day or the Disney runs. There's a couple dance competitions. But if we look at the calendar and kind of see what events are happening and kind of schedule around there, you can have a very low crowd experience at Disney in an off-peak season. And since the tickets now are based and priced on the tiered pricing with the peak season, it's more affordable too. So if you have the flexibility to go at different times, we can certainly find a time that would not be hot, not be crowded, and be less expensive.
And if you hurry now, you can probably get if you can get the room booked, you might not have too big of a crowd. Yeah. For sure. I think that the crowded thing is something that you can sort of kind of try to, when they yin, you yang, when they zig, you zag, and you figure out a way to make it so that you enjoy your space as you are moving around at this trip and everybody else is moving around amongst you, like eating lunch at 2 p.m. instead of noon. And then maybe you are at the park, maybe you're doing rides when people are doing fireworks or something like that. There are different ways that you can maneuver your way. Especially too, I'll add, this is a very important thing. If you have a sensory child, or if you're somebody in your family who has sensory issues and you need to take into consideration this kind of accommodations, is another thing that Erica can help you research and provide for you as well, because all those different things go into making or breaking your trip. And if you find yourself miserable because things are just so overwhelming that you can't take it in and enjoy it, that's not worth your money, and it's not a vacation that you're going to want to take. So those are conversations that when you have a travel agent, you don't know what's going on and you're worried about the crowding nature, Erica can help you plan that out and kind of really plus up your vacation experience, because you knew things that if you didn't use Erica, you wouldn't have known. Next one, common apprehensions about people coming to Disney World, planning your next Disney World trip. It seems like it's too stressful. How could this possibly be relaxing? Erica, how do you answer that?
Well, just kind of along the lines when we were talking about just being for kids. I've never been as a mom, so this is all I know, is going either as an adult or going as a child. So, in my opinion, that it's very relaxing because I have the most amazing meals. There's beaches at the resort, they're man-made beaches, but Disney has done so well with the theming that it truly makes you feel like you're being transported to these different places. So I'm able to be on the beach and, like I said, have dinner in Paris and go on an African safari all on one trip. And that to me, it's like amazing. And it's all how you want to do Disney. So if you go into it being like, I want to do everything that there is to do there, I would just say, if this is your first trip, just go into it knowing that you may not get to see everything that you want to see. And that kind of takes the stress off a little bit. And working with an agent, we just tell you where to go and when to show up. And there may be things that you are, so to speak, missing that you don't even realize that you're missing. And then we could just save that for your next trip when you come back. But
See what she did there?
Yeah, I'm in sales.
Yeah.
And they do have the bounce back offer, which makes it very attractive to come back again, because they have.
That's how I booked mine.
Yeah, they typically have a really good promo that's not for the general public. But with that being said, it's how you want to do it. I mentioned I don't go rope drop to fireworks because to me that's not relaxing. I like to wake up late and have a late breakfast and maybe sit at the pool or go to one of the beach areas. We typically stay at the resorts that have more of a relaxing feel, so to speak. To me, I think that a beach is relaxing, and that's how we do Disney. So having those conversations about what you look for. Some people think that standing at a parade is relaxing. Everybody's different, but that's the good thing about Disney, is that they literally have something for everybody. That no matter what, there's world-class spas on property, and there's world-class restaurants, and so having massages and having all of these accommodations, to me,
and you go at your own speed. I think that's the most important thing, that if you're worried about it being stressful and not a relaxing vacation, like, you've heard some people be like, say they go on a vacation, especially if you have kids, like, I need a vacation from my vacation before I can go back and be in the functional real world. You have to know to take it at your own speed, which goes along with what you're saying. Know that you're not going to do everything. Figure that out from the very beginning. You're not going to do everything. It will be there when you get back, in theory. And you will be able to enjoy things that you missed. You might enjoy things that you didn't know you were going to enjoy as much the first time and want to repeat them. But you are completely allowed to do it at your own speed. You are not being challenged to do it all. And you cannot, in fact, do it all. So don't try. Just try to take this section in, this vacation in, and enjoy it for what it's worth, and build off of that if you choose to go again, like me, because I can't stop going. Mark comments, and if you're watching us on our Facebook as we record this podcast live, you can comment on the Facebook Live and participate in this conversation. Mark says, when we go down, it's during Halloween and it's very nice, not crowded at all. Lines waits are not bad, and Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party is totally worth a ticket. Saratoga Springs is where we stay, and it's a wonderful resort right next to Disney Springs. That's a good story. Yeah, I really would love to go in the fall. I have to figure out how to work that out with my husband's schedule, or see if he'll let me go without him, which means I have to figure out how to work it out with my husband's schedule.
Well, we probably need to go for research, obviously. So
there, Jared, you heard it right there. It's for the podcast, and we're gonna make it happen.
And the fall is one of my favorite times. They have the Food and Wine Festival. If you plan it right, you can see both the fall and Christmas decorations. The weather's beautiful. The crowds are low. It's really a lovely time.
So the next one that we have here, these are the common apprehensions that people have when they are the concerns that they might have when it comes to booking your next trip, is mixed families when I'm talking about ages. So what if I have teenagers and littles? What if I have a multi-generational group that wants to go, like maybe my mom lives with me, but I've got my kids too. Like, how would you possibly go on a vacation like this and please everybody? Erica, is it possible to do?
Yeah. Well, and first I just want to caveat that, like you mentioned, when you go to Disney, you kind of become that 5-year-old self. I tell a story all the time that my mom said that when we would go, and when I was 16, as soon as I would see the castle, she said she would look at me and see her 5-year-old daughter again. And that was the worth every penny that it took to go back for that moment. And because you do, even as an adult, I mean, I still tear up at the fireworks, and I feel like a kid when I'm there. So there's just something that it's really magical.
You tap into it.
Yeah. And I think that, again, they've done a really good job of making experiences for the entire family. So something like Festival of the Lion King, I know we've talked about that, it has these larger than life puppets that the kids go crazy for, and the music, and they invite them down on stage. But then they also have this kind of Cirque du Soleil feel theatrical acrobats and this Broadway style music for, adults and grandparents to enjoy. So I think they've done a really good job with that. Now, there are things like, the Disney Junior Dance Party. That is something that, I never experienced because I never had kids. And I thought that Dan and I would look really silly just, sitting there dancing along. But, I think that they've done a really good job of having those. Plus, if you, as you're planning your trip, if you feel comfortable, like if you have teenagers in, 17, 18 years old, you all don't have to do the same thing at the same time. So if you want to split up and you want, the teenagers want to go ride Big Thunder Mountain while you guys do the Jungle Cruise or Dumbo, you can certainly do that and then meet back up if you're comfortable with that. The My Disney Experience app does to where everybody can do what they want to do. So if the parents want to split up, you can do that as well. They also have something called Rider Swap, to where if you have a little kid that doesn't want to ride maybe Big Thunder Mountain or something, you can switch to where you can still experience that with your teenager or your older child while the other parent stays back with the little kid, and then switch so you can both kind of get that experience. So they have a lot of protocols in place that make it to where everybody can enjoy the vacation at the same time. And I think that it's a big apprehension, but I think once you get there, you find that everybody just kind of like develops into this magic that is Walt Disney World, and you just kind of look around in families that you're like, oh, I bet the 16-year-old and the 5-year-old don't play all the time, but then here they are, sitting on a corner sharing a Mickey ice cream waiting for the parade to start. And it's just something that you just notice is all around you. It's just this feeling that it's a different place that's kind of indescribable.
Yeah, for sure. I want to get to our last point that we have here, and it's kind of a summation about. Did I get to everyone that we had written on our list? I think I did.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Two more. I'm sorry. Before we get okay, so the last one that I have written down here is I don't like roller coasters. Like I don't want to go to Disney. I don't like roller coasters. So what do you say? Is there anything other than I mean? I guess people didn't realize how huge of a roller coaster fan I am, because I go down there for a week and all I do is just get on a roller coaster and ride. There's a little bit more to do than that.
There is. And if anybody's been listening to this podcast, I invite you to go back and just learn a little bit about Erica Murphy, because I don't do big rides like that. Like sometimes even a Ferris wheel makes me a little queasy. I'm just kind of a wuss when it comes to stuff like that. And I love Disney because there's so much there to do. So I mentioned before that they have a little bit of something for everybody, that they have different levels of roller coasters. And the roller coasters that they're, honestly, I mean, I've done Space Mountain and I've done Big Thunder Mountain and all of that. And none of them are, they're not meant to make your blood pressure go up and this crazy exhilarating roller coasters like some coasters are. Everything that Disney does is very there's a story behind it, and it's very mindful. So like the Mine Train, even though it's fast around spaces, it stops and kind of tells a story, and you see the animatronics, and there's a very theatrical element along with it, to where it's not as terrifying as some of the other ones are. But there's so much to do. I don't think people realize how big Disney World. I mean, we're talking 4 parks.
Huge parks.
A lot of people, I think the misconception is that, Disney World is the Magic Kingdom. And I mentioned that that's typically the park that we spend the least amount of time at. And one of the attractions at Animal Kingdom is the entire size of the Magic Kingdoms. I mean, we're talking massive parks. So you may have been to a local theme park in your hometown and are like, I've done it once or twice. I don't want to spend all this money to do it again. It's nothing like that. If you're not a show person, you don't like theater, there's so much more than just roller coasters.
Food, drink, attractions, shows, art, music, like pools and resorts and golf and spas and shopping. And I'm not just talking about shopping for Mickey ears. It's like the Disney Springs has some of the nicest high-end shops that you can go shop, that people who don't go to Disney World still go shopping there because it's as nice as it gets.
Well, in Epcot, we mentioned has the different pavilions. A lot of those merchandise in those pavilions aren't necessarily even Disney related. You can get authentic merchandise from the prospective countries of those pavilions in those locations. So if you're looking for, an Italian leather handbag, or you're looking for a French perfume, that's where you can get those items that even aren't necessarily Mickey shaped.
Yeah. But they taste better when the food tastes better when it's Mickey shaped.
It totally does.
It does. I don't know why.
Well, so it's kind of like this thing. I always joke that my mom's water always tasted better when we were kids. Like, how when you take a drink of your mom's water and you're like, gosh, that's so refreshing. And it's like,
sandwich always tastes better when somebody else makes it. Cuts it in half or cuts it in a diagonal. I think I'm a diagonal eater.
Oh, I'm totally a diagonal.
I don't know why it's better. Just seems like it is.
Well, you eat with your eyes.
Yeah, that's true. I'm pro triangle.
Yeah.
That probably offended somebody, and I'm sorry if it offended you. The last apprehension or concern that I think people have is, I don't know about all the coming restrictions. And this is why I kind of say this for last. I said at the beginning of the podcast that we would discuss some of these Universal, because that's what we know now. This is what we know. There are a gajillion places you can go have fights to the death over what you think is going to happen and how awful you think that the other person is for thinking something differently than you. However, we do know that Universal has submitted their plan. You said today it's been accepted by the governor and everything?
Yep, it was it announced today, June 5th is the opening date. It was approved and they're going for it. So
I'm going to kind of rapid fire through these. And if this is a concern for you before you book your next trip, it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. Like, it is not anything that anybody is going to be able to answer except for you and for your family. So these are the measures that Universal Orlando Resort has put in place and had approved for their parks. And we assume that Disney will do something in the general vicinity of this, but we don't know. So we're going to wait and hear from Disney. But this is Universal's face coverings required. Everyone's required to wear face covering during their visit. They're asking you to wash your hands often and do it for 20 seconds. Glad we had to put a bullet point up for that one. Floor markings. When present, please stand on the floor markings until the group in front of you moves forward. So that's the 6 feet apart or 2 meters apart. Use hand sanitizer when required. At select locations, including prior to boarding ride vehicles, guests will be required to use hand sanitizer. I think this is interesting because I don't know what they're going to do specifically at Universal to sanitize the actual ride, like in between every single excursion. They're actually having the humans sanitize themselves, which, to an extent, is better than nothing. So, I think that will have some benefit. It's not going to be perfect, but nothing ever was. It'll probably be safer than it ever has been in the past, all things considered. Temperature check required. Temperature checks will be required upon arrival, and guests with a temperature of 100.4 degrees or greater will not be admitted. Social distancing. Practice social distancing and keep at least 6 feet away between your travel party and others. So I think that's something that I don't know that it needs to be said, but sometimes when you're not sure, you should just say it anyway. But you can be by your group, but your group needs to be 6 feet away from the next group. Another one is avoid contact with people who are sick. There's some common sense involved in that. And then follow team member direction. Please follow direction from our team members and have patience as we work through these new operational procedures. So I would imagine that this is probably a bit fluid in the sense that when you get there and they've been doing this for 2 weeks, they might in 2 weeks say, you know what, the mask thing is just, maybe we know more about the virus, or maybe it's not working in the parks, or maybe they're like, no, we're going to do masks forever. We don't know how this is going to change over time, but this has been an approved process that Universal has put out. And I think it's encouraging that there's something to hang your hat on. Maybe not where you want to hang it at night, but at least you could put your hat up at night and know that we are a step closer in the direction of getting back to normal.
Yeah, and these were some of the same protocols that we saw this past week when Disney Springs opened up May 20th. So I think that as the time goes on, like you said, as we get more information, I think that that's all. Um, we'll have more, and we'll certainly stay tuned to the Pixie Dust podcast Facebook page, because we'll be listening to that as we go along. Disney Parks actually put out a notice today, I'm sure on the heels of Universal putting out their information, just reminding people how the situation is fluid. As of right now,
Do you want to read it?
Sure. As of right now, they are only accepting reservations through July. They're after
Starting
July 1st.
July 1st, yeah. So you can't call and make a reservation right now for June, but there are people who do have June reservations who still have their June reservations. They're just not taking additional ones at this time.
Yeah. And we have our personal trip planned for June 27th, and ours hasn't been canceled yet. They have canceled through June 13th. So that's just what we know. They've typically been doing it week by week. So if they are going to cancel the following, we should probably know next week. So this came out today from Disney Destinations on May 22nd is the day that we're recording this. And it's a really nice, I encourage you to take a look at it. They say some really nice things about how it's an understatement to say that the past few months have been challenging, and about how during this time, we know how difficult it can be to plan your Disney vacation. So just having them acknowledge that, in my opinion, is something that, they're not just sitting in their offices being like, this is what we're going to do. They know that people are, it says, now more than ever, we're longing for the opportunity to come together as a family and friends, to escape, to celebrate, and redo missed milestones. So they understand that. It goes on to say, given the current uncertainty as to when we will reopen both Disneyland Resort or Walt Disney World Resort, we've had to periodically adjust the schedule for the ability to book hotel reservations at our resorts. While we're currently accepting reservations starting in July 2020 at both resorts, as the situation evolves, timing may continue to shift. So that could mean it could be late June, it could be in August. We don't know. Later in July. They just kind of left that open-ended. And I think that is just because we don't, until they announce when they're going to open, we don't know what that's going to look like. And at that capacity, I mean, Shanghai sold out in one day. So we don't know how many are on the books. We don't have the information to see kind of what the park levels are at now with current reservations. So I'm sure that's something they're keeping in mind with too.
So before we wrap up here, we've gone just a little over an hour. I want to ask you, Erica, for people who have had some of these concerns, maybe we've quelled some of them enough to make them feel comfortable having a conversation with you about planning or talking about planning a Disney World vacation. You said right now you can book a room as far out. Do you know what the date is as far out as?
You can book through 2021 if it's room only. So we call that a basic package. It's a little bit different to where it's not just the $200 deposit. You do have to have a one night. You have to pay for one night of the reservation, but it locks in your room. So if you're thinking of, you really want a standard room at Polynesian, something that books up really quickly, I would maybe recommend doing a basic package and then adding the tickets and dining and all that later. Otherwise, hopefully we should have more information on the full packages that are coming out within the next month.
Well, I want to encourage people to reach out to Erica at magicexpeditions.com, ERIKA. You've worked with quite a few Pixie Dust podcast customers now, clients, haven't you?
I have, yeah. And, I'm so grateful for the opportunity. I hope that people are listening to this just, for information and kind of fun. We joke that this is kind of our therapy, but I'm not
joking. I'm dead serious. This is therapy. You can check out the Annie Frey Show podcast to understand why I need the therapy.
Yeah. I have a day job. I have a full-time job. This is not something that I'm able to do right now full-time. I do it because I love what I do. I have been lucky enough to go to Disney since I was a child, and I understand the magic and the memories that are made there. So if I can help other people have those memories, and that is why I do what I do. So I joke about, I could talk about Disney all day. I really could. So I don't want anybody to feel pressure. I've been lucky to go for a very long time. So I also read a lot of the blogs and kind of keep up with that. So I do look at myself as kind of, in the know. So if you have any questions, I'm happy. And to debunk a lot, I want to preface and say that there's been a lot, especially now, of clickbait that's out there. People that are kind of using this pandemic to, get a more of a name for themselves and to kind of ride on the tails of this with what their beliefs are, which is all fine and dandy. But I've had a lot of people that have seen these and been like, panicked, like, what do you mean it's not going to open for another year? And it's like, we don't know what we don't know yet.
That was never news. That was never an actual story. It was one person who had access to write an article.
Exactly. So I want to say that the conversations that I have, I'm very careful about what I say, and I will only share what I have from Disney's mouth, because I don't want people to panic. Like, there's no need for that.
Well, Tony Colombo is going to join me next week, and we're going to speculate. That's all we're going to do. We are just going to throw out wild accusations about things, and Erica's going to be like, these people. I won't listen to that one. You can wash your hands completely of it. Well, thank you so much for listening today to the Pixie Dust podcast. If you joined us live while we recorded it on Facebook, thank you for being there. We're really grateful for it. We just created and have started to establish the Pixie Dust podcast Facebook page, which is a way that we can communicate directly with you. You can communicate directly with us. You can ask us questions and participate in helping us grow this podcast. It's something that's fun for us to do, and we are grateful for the opportunity to discuss these things with you. I got one question here before we go, because Janine just put it up here. What about Disney stores? Disney Springs is where most of the Disney stores are at Disney World, and they opened the 20th. The non-Disney stores opened, like Disney Springs opened up and welcomed people back in on the 20th, but the Disney stores that are at Disney Springs is like the 27th. I think it's the 27th. It's next week. Yeah. So it should be kind of as a whole opened next week. And I think that they might be doing some of the same things with Disney stores across country, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But Disney Springs was
varies by the city.
Phase 1. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, anything else, Erica, that you want to add here? Always great to have these conversations with you.
Yeah, no, I love having these conversations, and I'm just, like I said, I'm just grateful for the opportunity to do this every week. So I've made a lot of really good friends through this that I consider family. So
fantastic. Thanks, Erica. Email her at Erica. It's erica@magicexpeditions.com. And you need to subscribe to the Pixie Dust podcast on radio.com, and you'll never miss an episode. We've got a whole bunch there already. So if you've just found us, go back and look at the rest of the ones that we've put up there and catch up, and contact the Facebook page and tell us where we missed something, what you like that we said, a subject that you might like us to do for an episode, and we will get on it. Thank you so much for listening to the Pixie Dust podcast. We'll see you next time.